He laughed in my face and called me a loser at my wife's work dinner. I smiled, stayed silent, and then secretly built something so absurd it changed everything, including my marriage. It was a Thursday night, early spring, and my wife had invited me to a dinner with her colleagues from the firm. She works in corporate law, one of those high-rise offices downtown with glass walls and espresso machines that cost more than my first car. I'd been to a few of these gatherings before, always the same kind of crowd. Polished, confident, the kind of people who say things like circle back and value add without irony. I usually kept quiet, smiled when appropriate, and tried not to drink too much. This time, though, I had a feeling it would be different. Not better. Just different. We met at a restaurant in Midtown, one of those places with dim lighting and waiters who speak in hushed tones. The kind of place where you pay $38 for a plate with 3 scallops and a smear of foam. I wore a blazer I hadn't touched in months and shoes that still had a scuff from the last time I tried to impress someone. My wife, Claire, looked stunning. She always does. She has this way of carrying herself that makes people lean in when she talks. I've seen it happen 100 times. She's sharp, articulate, and knows how to navigate any room. I admire that about her. I envy it. We were seated at a long table near the back. There were about 10 of us, partners, associates, a couple of paralegals. I recognized a few faces from previous events. Claire sat beside me, and across from us was a guy named Evan. Tall, loud, the kind of man who laughs with his whole chest and slaps the table when he does. I'd heard about him before. He was one of the firm's rising stars, apparently. Yale Law, fast-track to partner, drives a Tesla and plays squash. The kind of guy who makes you feel like you should apologize for your existence. The dinner started off fine. Small talk won the usual. I mostly listened. Claire was in her element, discussing cases and strategy, tossing around acronyms I didn't understand. I nodded along, tried to follow, but mostly just watched. I've gotten good at that, watching. It's a skill, really. You learn a lot when you stop trying to be heard. At some point, Evan started talking about his recent trip to Aspen. Something about a chalet and a private chef. It turned out, I was thinking about the freelance project I just lost. Graphic design for a startup that ran out of funding. It wasn't much, but it would have covered groceries for a couple of weeks. I hadn't told Claire yet. I didn't want to ruin her night. Then it happened. Evan turned to me mid-story and said, "So, what do you do, man?" I hesitated. I always do. It's not that I'm ashamed, exactly. It's just that I never know how to explain it in a way that doesn't sound like failure. I do design, I said. Freelance stuff. Mostly branding and web. He nodded, took a sip of his wine, and then laughed. Not a cruel laugh, but not kind either. "Well," he said, grinning, "how's it feel to be a loser?" The table went quiet for a second. Just a beat. Then someone chuckled and the conversation moved on. Claire didn't say anything. She looked at me, briefly, then turned back to the woman beside her and started talking about litigation strategy. I smiled. Or maybe I smirked. I'm not sure. I just knew I wasn't going to let it show. I've thought about that moment a lot since then. Not because it hurt, though it did, but because it confirmed something I'd been suspecting for a while. That I'd become invisible. Not just to people like Evan, but to Claire, too. We used to talk about everything. Dreams, fears, stupid ideas for businesses we'd never start. Now it's mostly logistics. Groceries, bills, who's picking up the dry cleaning. I don't blame her. She's busy. She's building something. I'm just trying to hold on. After dinner, we walked to the car in silence. Claire was scrolling through her phone, probably checking emails. I wanted to say something, to ask if she'd heard what Evan said, if it bothered her. But I didn't. I just unlocked the car and got in. She didn't mention it, and neither did I. The next morning, she left early for a meeting. I stayed in bed for a while, staring at the ceiling. I thought about the projects I'd started and abandoned. The blog I never launched. The app one couldn't finish. I thought about the way Evan laughed, and the way Claire didn't flinch. I got up eventually, made coffee, and opened my laptop. Nothing new in my inbox. I refreshed it 3 times anyway. I spent the day pretending to work. Moved some icons around, tweaked a color palette, stared at a blank screen. Around noon, I went for a walk. There's a park near our apartment, not big, but quiet. I sat on a bench and watched a kid try to fly a kite. It kept crashing. He kept trying. I admired that. When I got home, Claire was already back. She was on a call, pacing the living room. I went to the kitchen, made us both tea. She didn't notice. I left hers on the counter and went to my desk. I opened a new file. Just a blank canvas. I stared at it for a long time. I don't know when things started to shift. Maybe it was gradual. A slow erosion of confidence, of purpose. I used to believe I was good at what I did. Not great, maybe, but good enough. Now I'm not sure. I see people like Evan and wonder if I ever had a shot. If I missed it. If I was too slow, too cautious, too afraid. Claire and I used to talk about building a life together. Not just surviving but creating something meaningful. I think she's still doing that. I'm just not sure I'm part of the blueprint anymore. I didn't bring up the dinner again. Neither did she. It became one of those things that lives in the silence between us. I started keeping a journal. Not every day, just when the noise in my head gets too loud. I write down thoughts, fragments, things I'm afraid to say out loud. Sometimes I write letters to Claire that I never send. Sometimes I write to Evan. I imagine telling him what it's really like. Not to be a loser, but to feel like one. I don't hate him. I envy his certainty. His ease. I wonder what it's like to move through the world without doubt. To laugh without hesitation. To speak and be heard. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say. Maybe I just needed someone to listen. A few weeks passed. Life went on. Claire's schedule got busier, and mine got quieter. I picked up a couple of small gigs, logo redesigns, social media templates. Nothing that made me feel proud, but enough to keep the lights on. I stopped checking job boards. Every listing felt like a reminder of what I wasn't. I told myself I was building something, that freelancing gave me freedom. But it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like drifting. One night, Claire came home late. She dropped her bag by the door and collapsed onto the couch. I asked how her day was. She said, exhausting, and closed her eyes. I watched her for a moment, then went to the kitchen and made her a grilled cheese. It was the only thing I could think to do. When I handed it to her, she smiled and said, "You're sweet." I nodded and sat beside her. We didn't talk much. The TV was on, some crime show neither of us were really watching. I wanted to ask her if she was happy. I didn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Evan's laugh. Not the words, just the sound. It echoed in my head like a loop. I got up around 3 a.m. and sat at my desk. I opened my journal and started writing. Not a letter this time, just a list. Things I used to love. Drawing comics. Making playlists. Sketching logos for imaginary companies. Writing fake ads for products that didn't exist. I used to do that for fun. I'd forgotten. The next morning, I dug through an old hard drive and found a folder labeled Ideas. Inside were dozens of half-finished projects. A mock-up for a cereal brand called Sados. A fake travel agency that only booked trips to places you regretted. A dating app for people who hate dating apps. I laughed. Really laughed. For the first time in weeks. I spent the day rebuilding one of them. Just for myself. No client, no deadline. I designed a fake homepage for a company called Failure Incorporated. The tagline was, "We've tried everything. Nothing worked. Hire us anyway." I made logos, wrote copy, even mocked up a testimonial section with quotes like, "They ruined my life, but at least they were honest." It was stupid, absurd, but it felt good. Claire came home and saw me working. She asked what it was. I told her. She raised an eyebrow and said, "You're weird." I said, "I know." She smiled and went to change. That night, we ate dinner together. No phones, no TV. Just us. It wasn't deep or emotional. Just normal. And that felt like progress. I started posting some of the fake projects online. Not under my name, just anonymously. A few people shared them. One got picked up by a humor blog. Someone messaged me asking if I did commissions. I said no. I wasn't ready. But it felt good to be seen. One afternoon, I got an email from a small agency in Portland. They'd seen one of my parody brands and wanted to talk. Not about a job, just a conversation. I said yes. We had a Zoom call. They were kind, curious, not like Evan. They asked what I wanted to do. I said, "I'm still figuring that out." They said, "Let us know when you do." Claire noticed the shift. She didn't say anything directly, but she started asking more questions. How my day was. What I was working on. She even laughed at one of my fake ads. I told her I was thinking about starting a site to host them all. She said, "Do it?" I said, "I might." One night, we were invited to another dinner with her colleagues. I hesitated. I didn't want to go. But Claire said, "It's just dinner." So I went. Same kind of place. Same kind of people. Evan was there. He nodded at me, said, "Hey man." I nodded back. He didn't mention the loser comment. I didn't bring it up. I didn't need to. During the meal, someone asked what I did. I said, "I make fake brands for fake companies." They laughed. Not mockingly, genuinely. One guy said, "That's hilarious." Another asked if I had a site. I said, "Soon." Claire looked at me and smiled. Not the polite kind. The real kind. After dinner, we walked to the car. Claire took my hand. She hadn't done that in a while. I asked if she was proud of me. She said, "Always." I didn't know if she meant it, but I believed her anyway. I still don't have it all figured out. I still wake up some days feeling like I'm behind. Like I missed something important. But I'm building again. Not a career, maybe. Not yet. But something. A voice. A space. A reason to keep going. And Evan? I don't think about him much anymore. His laugh doesn't echo the way it used to. It's just a sound now. One of many. I've got other things to listen to. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this.